Hey guys, this is part 2 of my sewing series, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to hem something or just use a sewing machine in general with my sewing machine here. So the camera's angled down a bit so you guys can actually see the workspace area. So I apologize if my head is a bit out of frame at some points. So when you're working with a sewing machine, there's many different types of sewing machines. I have the Brother brand, not a super expensive one, so fairly easy to use. The difficulty on using sewing machines based on if you've ever used one before, how expensive it is, stuff like that. But there are some common things that every sewing machine has. So the first thing is, you can't see it, but over on my side of the sewing machine, there's a little knob with all of the different settings and types of stitches. So I'm just doing a regular zigzag stitch for today's purpose. There's also this top thread over here. I just have some white to contrast against my black fabric, and it just goes on the level, and the thread weaves its way through onto the needle here. There's also a second thread in a compartment down here called the bobbin. Now the bobbin, like when you're sewing something, is going to be on the bottom side. So when I'm sewing it, my folded over edge right here is going to be facing up, meaning my bobbin is going to go on this non-folded edge on this side. So if your thread is going to be seen on the garment that you're sewing, make sure that your bobbin's the same color of it, because, well, you don't want like a purple on a black if that's not what you're wishing for. I normally like to always make both of my threads match whatever fabric it is that I'm sewing, just so I don't ever have to remember that the bobbin's going to be on the bottom. It might show, I don't have to remember any of that because both sides match. But for this, I chose two different ones to contrast with the black, so that way you guys can clearly see what it is that it's being sewn and how it's being sewn and such. Now every sewing machine has a lever that plugs in. My lever's on the floor. You use it to push with your foot, and the heaviness upon which you push it determines the speed of your sewing machine. So especially if you've never used one before, try to go nice and slow. Now I just have a plain black fabric here, so I'm going to just be folding over one of my edges. I'm going to fold it down, and I'm going to place that folded edge facing upwards, and I'm going to be placing it right under my machine, and I click down my little lever. My foot, this metal thing is called a foot, and my foot holds in place the fabric, so that way when it's sewing, it's not just going everywhere. But that foot is not a guide, it just helps press down. So when you go to sew, you can't just freehand it and let it do its thing. You do have to guide it, so that way it doesn't just go off rail, because there's no guards on the side to keep it going straight. That's pretty much it for the use of the machine. So now I'm going to actually start sewing the piece. When you hem something, you are always, I should have mentioned this earlier, but when you fold it over, don't just haphazardly fold it. You're going to want to measure where it is that you want it to be hemmed. And then you can decide to go and pin it along the sides, so that way it stays in place exactly like how you want it. I didn't feel for the purpose of this that it was necessary, so I'm not going to. Alright, I'm going to go quiet for a second, so that way the sewing machine can do its work and you don't have to worry about listening to me over the sewing machine. Alright, now, as you've seen, it's all hemmed up, and on the other side, the purple is showing through, as that was the color of my bobbin, and this is the folded over side with the white that was on top. Now, as I'm sure you might have seen at the end, I pressed a thing over here. It's the reverse button, and what it does is it starts feeding it the other way. Now, going and reversing at the end, as you can see, it's much thicker. There's more thread here. That's the area I was reversing. This is like tying the knot on your sewing machine. That back and forth secures your fabric, so that way now, without ever having to knot it, your thing is not going to be pulling apart. Alright, I hope this helped. Thank you.